Hello, and welcome to Publishing Essentials for LitMags, a series of webinars created to deliver a foundation in business skills for arts, literary, indie, and other small magazines. My name is Joyce Byrne, and it's my pleasure to produce Publishing Essentials on behalf of the Alberta Magazine Publishers Association. In today's lesson on magazine circulation, we are pleased to welcome Eithne McCredie. Eithne McCredie has been in the magazine industry for over 30 years, most recently as publisher of the Literary Review of Canada. Prior to that, Eithne was the publisher and co-founder of International Architecture and Design magazine and has consulted on numerous Canadian magazines, including Canadian Art, Brick, Small Farm Canada, Maisonneuve, Quill and Choir, Sharp, Briar Patch, Toronto Life, Saturday Night, Canadian Harrowsmith, and Opera Canada. Eithne also conducts seminars and lectures on the business and marketing of magazines for Simon Fraser University, the Department of Canadian Heritage, Magazines Canada, the Alberta Magazine Publishers Association, and the Magazine Association of BC. Eithne obtained an honours degree in political science from the University of Toronto. She was the first recipient of the Circulation Management Association of Canada's scholarship and attended the Stanford University Professional Publishing Program. Please join me in welcoming Eithne. Over to you, Eithne.
Hi, Joyce. Thanks for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. My name is Eithne McCredie, and I've had the pleasure of working for a number of magazines over the years, and quite a few literary and small publications, helping them boost their circulation specifically. And so I'd like to get started on how we can improve circulation in a cost-effective manner. And so first I want to go through all the different sources in print and digital and talk about the ones that work and the ones that haven't worked in the past. So because we can learn a lot from that as well. So as we know, print advertising is in decline all across the industry, which is putting the focus more and more on reader revenue. There's many ways that you can increase subscriptions, both in print and digital. And today I'm going to focus on the marketing approaches that work for both. I'm going to go through some traditional means and then how we can use that learning, incorporating that into a digital format. There's many sources of circulation. Each one has different costs, different response rates, mediums, and believe it or not, it doesn't matter what your editorial is, the response can be very similar for each medium. It's just the method and the tricks of the trade that we'll talk about that work for all of them. So the new reality is that we have to focus more and more on subscriptions. And there are many ways we can do it in print and digital, as I mentioned before. And many magazines right now are focusing on the digital options because they're cheap, they're free in a lot of cases. But print acquisition is still getting a higher response in many areas than the digital options. And you really have to look at circulation as a long-term investment that has some sources are profitable and some sources are not profitable. And so if you have a mix of these sources, in the end, hopefully it's a break-even situation. And I think that's the goal that you want to work towards. And you can only really do that if you actually track and measure every single thing that you do in terms of how you get subscribers, what you do, and the time measured, your valuable time in implementing these strategies. So your magazine, it's business, right? So you can control the costs, you control the revenue, and you can only do that by having a budget, an annual budget. A lot of magazines that I go and visit don't have a budget and don't really keep track of where their expenses are. They kind of look at revenue as what's in the bank and what's coming in every day, but they're not really keeping careful track of that. So my goal today is to try and get anybody who's listening to this today is to love your Excel files and track everything you're doing, all your expenses, all your revenue in one place so that you can no longer say, I think that worked or I think that didn't work. It's really, here's the data. The data should really dictate what you do and how you do it. So you can control your costs and revenue, and you can also determine who your readership is and who you want to build, the kind of readers you want to build for your magazine by how you approach them and where you find them. So the only way to do that is really to look into what your market is, what your market size is, what's a realistic expectation of what the market penetration is. And you can only do that by finding out who your competitors are, what their numbers are. And you can do some research on this. I love doing this. You look at your competitors, you look at what their subscription prices are, you see what their ad rates are, their frequency, and you see if there's any vulnerabilities there are they doing something editorially that you're not, that you can maybe take advantage of. And that's where it comes back to looking at your publication. I mean, our role as circulation people is to sell the editorial of the magazine. So every time you're marketing a subscription, you want to identify what your editorial benefits are. What makes you different from any other magazine that's out there? So with that in mind, here's a little sample budget. And at the top section is how you manage your print runs. So this is a typical quarterly magazine that's got a subscription count of about 1,200 subscribers. Newsstand distribution draw of about 500, and then we have office copies for promotions and events and etc. So if you have a print run of around close to 2,000 per issue, all the costs down on the left-hand side going down are related to that print run. Your printing costs, your postage, your fulfillment, that's the database that manages your subscriber file. And then the next section is under your circulation, got all the costs that you need to incur to manage that circulation. And I'm going to focus a lot today on renewals, but managing your circulation, obviously, there's costs associated with this. Renewals tend to be the most expensive for most publications, as the smaller publications in particular. But then you have the next line, gifts, direct mail, inserts. So you've got other costs that are more variable. And that tends to be the costs that get wiped out when a magazine is feeling the pinch, which of course we all do. And then you've got some online costs as well, if you'd like to test some Google and social media ad purchasing. So those are your circulation costs. Then you've got editorial, your contributors, your design, and your production costs. And then down below, you've got your other costs like salaries, digital software, your rent, and other costs there. So basically, you've got an $18,000 worth of expenses here. And then below, this is per issue. And then below, you've got your revenue per issue. Again, there's advertising revenue that can be print and digital. Then you've got your circulation revenue and other, perhaps you sell advertising on your newsletters. And then you've got your grant revenue, hopefully. I'm sure most of us are getting grants from whether it's federal or provincial, and sometimes there's local. So when you're keeping track of all this, all the expenses and the revenue per issue, it gives you a full picture of where you can make a difference. So in other words, if you do get a grant for a direct mail campaign and you do that in the fall, then you can have a positive impact on your print run for the winter issue, and that'll increase the expenses, but it'll also increase your revenue. So you can use this template just to do some what if scenarios as well. Then the other question I get quite often is how much do we charge for our subscriptions and how much do we charge for a cover price? So again, looking at your competitors to see what their cover prices are, obviously is a good place to start. Industry-wise, we've seen cover prices are getting higher, where at the same time, subscription prices are getting higher as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you increase your price, you'll get more revenue. As I've seen with a number of direct mail campaigns and some price testing, it's called price elasticity. And generally speaking, the increase in your subscription price would be the decrease in your response revenue. So if you went from $25 a year up to $30 a year, let's say you used to get 3 orders per campaign at $25, you'd bring in $75. But if you changed it up to $30, you only got 2, you'd only bring in $60 in revenue. So again, it doesn't actually bring in most cases. But again, that's testing. So you have to test it to figure that out. So the other thing you can do in pricing is think about your offer. And do you include a free digital with your print subscription? Do you do a special 2-year offer, a 3-year offer? And do you bundle with other newsletters and other options? So on to the math of this, because we know I love math. So the cover price, this is an example of a cover price of $15 and a quarterly magazine. And so if you have four issues a year at $15, the cover price annually is $60. If you're offering a subscription at $35 a year, that your subscriber is saving, your potential subscriber is saving $25, which is 41% off the newsstand cover price. And that comes out to $8.75 per copy. So I use this spreadsheet for what if scenarios. So if I want to increase my price to $40, then I'm saving $20 off the annual cover price, which is 33%, and now it's $10 a copy. So if you can run through some numbers in this spreadsheet to see, okay, what is the strongest, most compelling offer to a potential reader? And obviously, if you have 41%, that's a stronger savings than 33%, and then so on. So the other great place to do some pricing strategies is in the 2-year offers and the 3-year offers. I tend to work on those for renewals more than a new business acquisition pricing. But again, it depends on the magazine. So those are things to think about. So on to newsstand sales. So we all know that there's the fewer bookstores that are out there, the fewer places there are to sell magazines. So we have that challenge to go through. It seems to be stabilized right now. I know that Magazines Canada has an independent list of bookstores that sell magazines. There's about 30, I think, nationally. Not huge, but if you're monitoring it very closely, you can actually make a difference as to what your sell through is per store. And if you are with Magazines Canada or a smaller distributor, they will give you the data to see what your store by store sales are. And then most magazines lose money on the newsstand. So you have to think about why you're on the newsstand. And it is a loss leader, but brand visibility is very important. It just doesn't have a revenue element to it. So it's not necessarily a major acquisition source, but it is important for a lot of magazines out there just to be an option to sell more copies. There's a few things on the newsstand that you can do to boost sales. Certainly, anniversary issues can increase sales. I just got back from the UK, and it's incredible how healthy their newsstands are over there. And I notice a lot of magazines are doing special prices. So they'll say it's €5 for this issue. And there's also a lot of polybagging going on over there. So they polybag with beauty samples. The kids section is incredible. They polybag with a lot of toys and things like that. So it's interesting to see another market and how they have really continued to make a difference. And it's obviously working because the retailers are giving them lots of space. And that includes the grocery stores as well. So, as with the budget that we were looking at, it's the same situation with newsstand sales. You want to keep track of every single issue that goes in the newsstand, not just in terms of what you're selling, but also how much you're paying for to get those copies on the newsstand. So, I do keep track of the printing expense of how much it costs to print those 300 copies and track the sales by issue, and I look at the gross and the net revenue. And this spreadsheet shows you that it's pretty standard loss for publication. For the sales of this publication is just hovering between 25 and 30%. That's pretty healthy these days. 10 years ago, it used to be closer to 30, 35%. But again, we're seeing the sell-through rates drop. And that's why I think a lot of the cover prices have been going up as well. The other thing I'm showing on this spreadsheet is a special anniversary issue. Don't be afraid to increase the cover for a special issue, or an SIP as we call them, special interest publication. On an annual, Harrowsmith is one of my clients, and they have a Farmer's Almanac that comes out in the fall. That's got a higher cover price. And what's also great about an issue like that is it stays in the newsstand a lot longer than the regular quarterly issues. It's just got a longer shelf life. So that can be a very effective way to improve sales in that number as well. The next thing we're going to cover is direct mail. So I'm going to talk about the traditional ways of going about a direct mail campaign. And it is the most expensive acquisition channel, but I wanted to go through this and include this today because the steps that you go through for direct mail are really this kind of the same elements that I think you need to think about when you're doing any other kind of promotion, whether it's digital, whether it's a renewal notice, whether it's insert card that you're doing in the magazine, you want to keep the same elements. So I'm going to go through how to get a direct mail campaign going, and it can be, believe it or not, direct mail can be profitable if you get the right list. The most important response element in direct mail is the list that you mail to. And of course, the list ideally is your direct competitor. And the reason that is the most important is because you know that list of people, A, they subscribe to a magazine, and B, they're interested in your editorial niche. And that's the only way, and you know that they buy print magazines. So those elements are key to your marketing initiatives, and they're more attractive to it. And if you are at a certain editorial niche, say it's quilting, if you love quilting, you're going to get every single quilting magazine that's out there. So you don't even feel like you're hitting your competitors, because those people will subscribe to 2 or 3 magazines in that editorial niche. And you can approach your competitor and see if you do a list exchange with them. And I've found that most magazines are pretty open to that. You give me yours, I'll give you mine for a one-time mailing. So that's the most important element. The second most what I like to call response effective element is the actual offer. And that's the price that you charge for your subscription. And then that's usually 30% of that. And then the last thing that's important in a campaign is the creative. So it's only 10% though. It's not a lot. So I know a lot of magazine people like to get caught up on what the package looks like, and it looks junky or it doesn't look junky. But in terms of creative, you want that package to look and feel like the editorial of your magazine. And the best way to do that is to show covers of your magazine and spreads and use the same font and the same thing. But there are elements within that package that are marketing elements. There's strong colors that we like to call response initiating colors, and those are usually red and yellow. And then there's starbursts, of course, or Nabisco corners. Those still tend to work well as well. And I've seen premiums coming back a little bit, so those seem to be coming back in. I've seen stickers included in the direct mail package, bumper stickers, things like that. So whatever works well for your magazine, yeah, it's certainly worth thinking about. So on this spreadsheet here that I've done for direct mail, I've gone through, these are typical list responses for the kind of mailing that I'm typical magazine mailing. So your direct competitor will get at least 2%. And then if you get another magazine list that's got similar editorial, it'll get a little bit less, like around 1.8%. If you find a magazine list that's got similar demographics, again, that'll be a lower response at 1.75. And then a non-magazine list, like maybe it's an event attendee list or people who've gone to a book launch, those tend to be quite a bit less because you don't know that they subscribe to a magazine. And then the very best list is you're going to be your own expires. Those always get usually around 3 to 4%, sometimes 5 or 6 I've seen. If they are getting higher than 5 or 6, that probably means that your renewal series isn't very effective. So you might want to go back to that. But every time I do a mailing, I always go back at least 2 or 3 years on the expires and include that in the package. And if you can't afford to do a direct mail campaign, which most of us have had a hard time being able to justify, I definitely do an expire mailing once a year. And that means going back at least 2 or 3 years and just mailing to those 2 lists. Maybe it's 1925 and 24 expires. Chances are those will be either break even and perhaps even profitable. So that's something to think about. The other thing I like to do if I've got the email list is to follow up with an email reminder after the direct mail campaign, just to reiterate the offer. And again, that'll be tough to get with the competitors list and other magazine lists. It's quite expensive, but certainly your own expires you can do that with. And then below on this spreadsheet, I've just included some typical costs for direct mail package. This spreadsheet can be used for grant applications. They're all realistic responses, realistic price per thousands for all the elements, the outer envelope, the brochure, etc. And I've got some samples here of some traditional direct mail packages. This is a Toronto Life package that was I received last year, and it's very old school, which is really interesting. It really is just all about the offer. The outer envelope is just a plain window, and then the order form is, as you can see, it's very, very price focused. It's 69% discount, 1 year for $39.99. What you may or may not be able to see right here is there's a key code here, and that key code really is the list that it went to. So when the response comes in, people are tracking the list that it came from. So you know how effective each mailing list is. So going down through here, when I was talking about the editorial benefits, this is a benefit package, and it just lists all the benefits that you get by subscribing for 1 year. And it's got a premium. It's a cocktail book for Toronto Life. That's a free bonus. And then you also get a free digital edition. So it's a very strong offer and compelling. And then it includes a brochure. That's what it looks like. And I've also got a sample of a mailing that I do for a magazine. It's called The Messenger of St. Anthony. And they have an interesting twist on their approach is they ask for a donation, and with that donation, you get a 1 year subscription to a magazine. So here's the order form, and it's very interactive, this order form on the back. You can actually put some prayers on it. But as you can see, the $25 price point, if you donate over $25, you get a free subscription to the magazine. I've seen this mail, it's the same package probably for 10 to 15 years. They've used the same creative, very effective for that market. So it's a very expensive package to produce because it's for color. But again, it works very well. So let's get on to digital acquisition. So, as I keep hammering home today, digital is essential, but I don't think it should replace all your marketing initiatives. It's important to test. It's easier to test on digital, as we all know. And the other thing to keep in mind is how much time you spend on digital. I've seen some publications just go like hours and hours doing this and that and getting one or two orders. That may not be a best use of your time. So keep track of that if you're finding that that's the case. Whereas if you do an insert card or other things, you can do that once and then repeat it throughout the year. Same with digital initiatives. If you know that something is working, repeat it until it doesn't work anymore. But again, you have to keep track of that and not have a someone else tell you they don't like it or it's not working. You need data to dictate those decisions. So back to digital and social media, they have very strong marketing options, and I know most of you have probably used Google and other social media, Instagram, LinkedIn is doing it now, Reddit, but they have numerous selections that you can do. So you can really target on there to see how effective that is. And you can also test it with some very small amounts of money, like $10 or $15 to see what works and what doesn't. So on email performance, again, it's kind of like the direct mail that it really depends on the list quality that you've got. I haven't seen a lot of outside email lists campaigns, mainly because it's so expensive. Most magazines will not let their email lists out of their pockets. So it's usually outside compiled lists I've seen, and a compiled list from a survey or other databases don't tend to perform very well. But again, test it. Website ads are very effective. Obviously, if they're on your own homepage, you can do very well by those. I like to switch them as often as I can, maybe every other week, maybe a pop-up, maybe different formats, just to keep it young and lively. The website ads are one place on your own site that you can have a higher subscription price, basically your basic rates. And when you're going out to get new subscribers on the other formats, whether it's social media, in other words, you can do a lot more price testing, maybe a free issue offer, those types of things. But I wouldn't do that on your website. Newsletters are a really good source right now for acquiring subscribers. It's really interesting what a number of magazines are doing with that right now. They're building multiple newsletters. Toronto Life is a great example of different newsletters that they've got that are niche. They'll do one for restaurants, they'll do one for real estate. And again, not all of them are brand new editorial. They're just taking from what the recent issue is, perhaps in the magazine, or even going back a couple of years. So if there's something in the news right now about a new pizza joint, they can go back to a review that they did on it on a similar startup 5 years ago and put that in their newsletter. So in those newsletters, they tend to have an ad for a subscription and tracking those because you can sign up for these newsletters for free. And those ads that are in those newsletters are trending anywhere from 3 to 5% conversion rate. So, in other words, you've got a free newsletter out there. People may or may not subscribe to the magazine. Majority that don't usually subscribe to the magazine in this case, but those ads are generating 3 to 5% on a monthly basis. So it can be very, very effective source of new subscribers. I like to treat it almost as a direct mail list. So that's one way to kind of look at what your newsletters, the costs that are associated with them. And you can also use your newsletters to exchange with other similar magazines, newsletters, to do ad exchanges, and that I've seen that work really, really well because magazines are more open to doing that. You can go on my free list and I can go on your free list. And there's other publications like, say it's a gardening magazine, you can go to a seed catalog and say, can I go on your gardening newsletter? And you can go in our gardening newsletter, those types of things. So newsletters give you a lot more flexibility in your bargaining for exchange ads and lists. So I've got here's a spreadsheet that tracks all the offers that I would do throughout the year, things to think about. This one is just for monthly on how you can kind of change your message up depending on the month, depending on the holiday, what medium you're going to use, what's your offer, if you've bought any advertising. And then here we want to track the response to that, right? So you can year over year see what works and what doesn't, and don't do what doesn't work. That's important here. So here's an ad that we did for Harrow Smith's 50th anniversary this year. Isn't that amazing? 50 years from publication. So this is a digital ad that we put in other newsletters. We didn't want to put the price point in here, so it's just subscribe now and push the button, and then the landing page has the offer on it. Here's the same ad in a different format. Gift subscriptions are fabulous. I love gift subscriptions. For many consumer magazines, they're the most profitable source of new subscriptions because you don't have to go to outside lists. Your own magazine subscribers are the best source to promote gifts to, and they are the best ambassadors for your editorial. Like if you have a fishing magazine, chances are that these subscribers have readers that are friends and family that love to fish as well. So it makes sense. If you try and promote a fishing magazine to outside lists, it's just not going to work quite as well. Rarely have I seen gift subscriptions work well outside the magazine's universe. And the best time to promote gift subscriptions is obviously in the holiday season, around September. I've seen it earlier, August even. And don't be afraid to just do it all through August for 4 months. September, October, November, up until December. There's several inexpensive ways to promote gifts. I'm going to focus on the print traditional ones first, and then we can talk about some digital options as well. So one of the most inexpensive ones is a gift wrapper. And that's an insert that's included with the magazine, the print magazine that you're mailing. And they usually get around I've seen 3 and 4% response on that. And the reason it's so profitable is that you don't have to pay for the postage. It's already included with the magazine's postage costs. So that's a very good source. And another profitable mailing is to your current subscribers. I exclude libraries, obviously, sometimes companies, depending on the magazine. But if I'm going to do a gift mailing to say 800 subscribers, I'll get at least 3 to 5% response and pretty close to being profitable. Then I like to follow up, obviously, with some email, the same offer to those very same subscribers. And then also I put holiday gift offers in any newsletter on the website all through those months. And again, keep tracking of them. There's many different offers that you can do for gifts. We've seen the 2-for-1, 2 gifts for the price of 1. We've seen tiered offers. So if you give 1 gift, it's $20, 2 gifts, it's 15, 3 gifts, it's 10. I know that's cheap. And so you can play with their offers to see what works for your magazine. Here's a sample of a gift wrapper that we did for Gripped Publishing. They have 4 magazines, and so they're trying to sell 2 or 3. So they're does very, very, very well. This wrapper, the 2 subscriptions for $40, very inexpensive. We're going to increase that next year, by the way. And believe it or not, people still respond to this print very well. They perf out the order form. Their name and address is already lasered on the front because this is the letter carrier for the magazine. And we also follow up with an email offer as well. So there's the back of it. Here's a sample of a mailing we did to Harrowsmith subscribers for gift subscriptions. So just a traditional letter, very straightforward. And here's the email follow-up, the same offer. Again, profitable, both those things. And now we're going to talk about contests and submission fees. So many literaries that I've seen like to include an annual essay, poetry contest, and how it works is with their submission fee of whatever that is, could be 25, 30, 40, whatever the price is, that submission fee includes a subscription to the magazine. So they're a great way of getting subscriptions in. Unfortunately, they don't renew very well. So what that does, it makes magazines kind of reliant on an annual basis of doing these contests. So it's hard to get out of that. If you want to get away from contests, it's tough because you've kind of trained your readers to do that. So they can be profitable up front, but I'd like to see contests as a nice mix of your circulation sources and hopefully not the majority of your circulation is that. So here's a way to track how you're promoting your contest. So kind of like direct mail, I'm sure there's different ways that every magazine does their contest promotions, but quite often there's exchange ads and other maids. Those are the print ads. They'll do insert card distribution. Sometimes they'll be in coffee shops, around art galleries, those types of things. And then you've got social media campaigns, newsletter ads, and on their website. Those are just the different ways of getting people to sign up for your contest. So one that's really fun that I've loved looking at is the Modern Dog Photo Contest. And this is so great because people love to look at their dogs, right? And so they go through, and when you go on the landing page to sign up, what's really interesting about this is you have to include your mailing address. So that gives the magazine a list. And so not only their email list, but also the mailing address. And there's no submission fee, it's free. So what you could do with that list is obviously mail or email an offer to them. So you're actually creating your own list of people who love your editorial. Brilliant. So they have a cat magazine as well. They do the same thing. Then you've got Geist. They've got different contests. They've got an annual essay contest. They've got a postcard contest. They've got poetry as well. And it's fun, does very well for them. And again, it's their landing page. You can see what kind of information they're collecting from people, whether it's a submission fee or whether it is they're building a marketing list for themselves. Renewals are my favorite part of circulation. And most magazines tend to underutilize renewals as a source. They account for at least 65 to 70% of any magazine's circulation revenue. And if it's done properly, it can be as high as 80%. So the interesting thing about renewals is if you improve your renewal response rate by 2%, it's pure profit. And that's really where you can make a huge inroad in your revenue. I know we like to spend a lot of time saying how we're going to get new subscribers. Let's try this and let's try that. But if you did half that time and effort and put that towards renewals, you would see a far greater impact on your revenue and for the long term as well. So I'm a huge fan of renewals. If you do nothing else, just do renewals and make it as effective as possible. It's money in the bank. So no matter what your frequency is, you should have at least 5 renewal efforts. Now, those can be a combination of printed mailed renewal efforts and digital efforts, but you should have at least 5. A lot of quarterly magazines that I'm working with right now have 6 renewal efforts. Usually it's 4 print in the mail and then 2 email. In terms of response, the printed efforts still outperform the digital emails. The emails I'm seeing an improvement definitely over the years. It used to be like around 2% for a digital, and now I'm seeing as high as 5 or 6%. So that's great news because that means you can save some money on your mailing efforts. So in other words, just think of email as a supplement to your series and not replace a print still, unless you're seeing some great inroads there. And auto renewals are definitely on the up right now. Most magazines are offering them. You have to make sure that your fulfillment system can manage them properly. I've seen some screw ups there, and it's really hard to recover from that. So make sure you can do it properly. And auto renew, you can dictate what your price is going to be when they do renew. Quite often you can say at the price that we're offering at that time, so you don't have to lock into a particular price. So that's another thing. The other thing you can do with renewals is play with your multi-year offers. So definitely a 2 and 3-year offer. So here's a spreadsheet with sample renewal analysis. So I like to keep track of every single effort that goes out in terms of the scheduling, quantity that they were mailing. I keep track of what the net response is per effort, revenue, expenses, and the offer that's included in that message. So for each letter that I send to the subscriber, I want to focus on a different benefit. That benefit can be a price savings. In the first couple of efforts, usually it's a long-term savings. But as they get closer to expire, I focus more on the urgency. And then with each one of them, I also talk about an editorial benefit. Then towards the end of the series, you really want to just stick to the 1-year offer and the urgency. What I've seen quite a bit of in renewal letters is begging towards the end. Please don't beg. You want to focus on the positive. I'm not a fan of begging. You want to focus on the editorial benefits and how their life will not be good if they don't have the magazine in their life. That will improve the renewal response rates next year as well because you're reminding them of why they love your magazine and why they got it in the first place. Now, these responses by effort are typical for a magazine. So in the first couple of efforts, you should be getting 18, 14%. And then as you get closer to expire, those responses go down. You can see the email efforts of 5%. The last email effort, was at 2%. And those have seen, if you feel like you're getting higher than 2% in the last response, you should be sending more renewal efforts. Again, emails are easy to do. So keep doing it until you lose money because I'm keeping track of my profitability on each and every effort. And if I'm still making money there, maybe I need to put in another effort at the end. So on to some samples of some renewals. This is what we do for Canadian Running magazine. There's 6 renewal efforts. These are side by side, but just to give you an idea of what the creative is, it's a little bit different for each effort. Got to put Canadian in there. The outer envelopes are all different on the outside. So the message is different. Very effective renewal series. And then we send them an email message as well. Very straightforward. For the email renewal copy, I try and keep it very short and sweet. And these have got lots of savings benefits on them and urgencies. Here's one for Harrowsmith. This is an email message from Harrowsmith, and they include a free digital edition with their subscription. So that's part of the benefits that they like to focus on in the renewal series. And then the final things to think about today are just remember to use data to drive your decisions, not intuition. Quite often I'll say, well, people went to an art show last year and it was didn't work out very well. But if you sold 20 subscriptions there, perhaps it was worthwhile doing. So keeping track of what you're doing is the only way you can make smart decisions. You also want to maintain a very balanced mix of print and digital. You want to be everywhere at every time, but you want to make sure that you're doing it in the right places. And you can only do that by tracking activity and response. And think about testing offers and lists and platforms and creative on a regular basis. And again, it's easy to do with digital. You can try different things to see what works and what doesn't, but just focus on renewals. That's really where you're going to make a big, huge difference. And thank you for taking time with me today. And good luck with your magazine. So thanks for taking time for listening to my webinar today. I look forward to any questions that you may have on this. And also, if you would like me to help you out with your grant writing or your circulation market initiatives, my contact information, you can find that on the side of the screen there. And thanks again, and good luck with your magazine.
Thanks so much for all of that information, Eithne. You talked a little bit about the vitality you saw in the UK newsstands, and I think one of the areas every magazine struggles with is how to make their magazine more interesting and more saleable. Do you have any suggestions for how literary magazines and other small magazines can approach being more approachable on the newsstand?
Yeah, there's a couple of ideas that I've seen that work quite well. And again, it's a little bit time focused. Might take a lot of time to set up, but it's always great to look at what your editorial niche is and see what kind of outlet would match that. So, for instance, if you're an art magazine and there's a particular gallery that you love and they have great opening parties and those types of things, you could approach them to say, have you thought about selling my magazine in your gallery? And if they're saying yes or no, you can also always offer them a free page in the magazine. In That's a great way to get into a non magazine store situation. And those can do very well. Issues Magazine store in Toronto is great. They do one-off events. They have a window display. You can talk to them to see what would work for your magazine. There's other smaller independent retail outlets that will be open to some ideas. Book City has window display options. McNally Robinson has some promotional vehicles that might be expensive, but perhaps you can get some grants for that. So there are certain areas in newsstand that you can make a bit of a difference and boost your visibility as well.
Terrific. Thanks so much again for your time, Ethne.
You're welcome. Thank you.